Dylan's eyes snapped open to blinding white lights and the steady beep of medical equipment. His body felt heavy, disconnected, as if someone had filled his veins with lead. The last thing he remembered was fire, orange and red flames licking at the transport shuttle's hull, and a small figure trapped beneath twisted metal. "You're awake," a soft voice said. Dylan turned his head slowly, every muscle protesting. A nurse stood beside his bed, her lavender skin and forearms identifying her as a Quilarian. "You've been unconscious for 3 standard cycles. You're lucky to be alive, specialist." Lucky? Dylan almost laughed, but his chest burned too much. He'd stopped believing in luck the day he enlisted in the Terran Defense Corps 15 years ago. "The girl," he rasped, his throat dry as sand. "The Vexian child. Is she?" "She's alive because of you," the nurse said, her eyes softening. "The entire colony is talking about it. A human threw himself into a burning wreck to save an alien child he didn't even know." Dylan closed his eyes. He didn't feel heroic. He felt tired. Bone-deep, soul-crushing tired that no amount of sleep could cure. That's what 2 decades of war did to a person. It carved out everything soft inside and left only reflexes and instinct. The transport had been civilian, carrying refugees from the outer rim colonies to safety. When the engine core malfunctioned, Dylan had been the closest responder. He'd heard the screaming, high-pitched and terrified, and his body moved before his brain could catch up. Through the smoke, he'd found her, a Vexian child, no more than 5 or 6 in human years, her crystalline skin reflecting the flames like a prism. The support beam had pinned her small body, and her large, multifaceted eyes had stared up at him with absolute trust. Humans were known across the galaxy as warriors, as the species that somehow turned aggression and stubbornness into an art form. But in that moment, Dylan hadn't been a soldier. He'd just been someone who couldn't walk away from a child in pain. He'd lifted the beam. Somehow, despite the heat melting his gloves, despite his old combat injuries screaming in protest, he'd carried her out just as the shuttle exploded, throwing them both clear. Then everything went black. "She's been asking about you," the nurse continued, adjusting his IV line. "Every day. Her family wants to thank you personally." "Not necessary," Dylan muttered. "Just doing what anyone would do." "That's where you're wrong, specialist." The nurse's voice carried a strange reverence. "Most species would have calculated the risk and retreated. Humans don't. You run toward danger when everyone else runs away. That's why the galaxy fears you, and why some of us have learned to be grateful you exist." Before Dylan could respond, the door slid open. A Vexian couple entered, their crystalline bodies catching the light. Between them, holding both their hands, was the little girl. Her arm was bandaged, and a few cracks spiderwebbed across her shoulder, but her eyes, those enormous, multifaceted eyes, lit up when she saw him. "You're awake," she squeaked, her translator rendering her chittering sounds into standard galactic common. She pulled free from her parents and rushed to his bedside, too small to reach the high hospital bed but bouncing on her feet excitedly. Dylan felt something crack inside his chest, something that had nothing to do with his injuries. "Hey there, little one," he managed, his voice rough. "How are you feeling?" "I'm okay. The doctors fixed me." She held up her bandaged arm proudly. "Daddy says you saved me. Daddy says humans are the bravest species in the whole galaxy." Her father approached, placing a hand on his daughter's head. "We can never repay this debt, Specialist Dylan. In Vexian culture, a life debt is sacred. You risked everything for someone you'd never met, from a species not your own." Dylan shook his head slightly. "I couldn't leave her. That's all." "That's everything," the mother said softly, her voice like wind chimes. "Most species would have prioritized their own survival. Humans seem to have a deficiency in self-preservation when others are in danger." "We call it stupid," Dylan said with a weak smile. "We call it noble," the father countered. The little girl had climbed onto a chair beside his bed, bringing herself to eye level with him. She reached out with her small 3-fingered hand and placed it on his scarred knuckles. "Thank you for being brave for me," she whispered. When I grow up, I want to be brave like humans. I want to help people too. Something in Dylan's chest tightened. All these years of fighting, of following orders, of watching good people die for inches of territory, and he'd never felt like his service mattered. Not really. The war had taken everything from him. His innocence, his hope, his belief that one person could make a difference. But looking at this child, this living, breathing proof that sometimes one person absolutely could make a difference, Dylan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Tears blurred his vision before he could stop them. One tracked down his scarred cheek. The little girl's eyes widened. "You're crying." Dylan quickly wiped his face, embarrassed. "No, I'm not. I'm not crying, you are," she announced. But her own eyes were glistening, her crystalline face reflecting light through her tears like a disco ball. She was absolutely crying too. Dylan laughed, actually laughed, and it hurt and felt wonderful at the same time. "Okay, maybe we're both crying." "That's okay," she said seriously, patting his hand. "Daddy says crying means you have a big heart, and you must have the biggest heart in the whole galaxy." The parents exchanged glances, their own eyes misting. Dylan squeezed the little girl's hand gently. "What's your name, kiddo?" "Elsie," she said proudly. "My parents gave me a human name because they love human stories, and now I have my own human story about the day a real human hero saved my life." Hero. Dylan had never thought of himself that way. He'd just been a soldier, following instincts carved into him by years of combat. But maybe that's what heroism really was. Not grand speeches or medals, but simply choosing to act when it mattered most. "Well, Elsie," Dylan said, his voice stronger now, "you make sure you grow up to be brave and kind. The galaxy needs more of that." "I promise," Elsie said solemnly. Then she smiled, a brilliant expression that made her entire face shine. "And when I do brave things, I'll think of you. I'll think of the human who taught me that being scared is okay, as long as you help people anyway." As Dylan watched Elsie and her family, something fundamental shifted inside him. The weight he'd carried for so long didn't disappear, but it felt lighter somehow, bearable. Maybe he wasn't just a worn-out soldier after all. Maybe he was exactly what the galaxy needed him to be, human.